Owning some kind of personal computing device, whether it's a desktop, laptop, tablet, or phone, is now a must-have for most people. But are we better off now than decades before, or are we still struggling to figure out our devices, cables, and other connections? We're going to talk about these issues and more on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is Larry O'Connor. He is the founder and CEO of Other World Computing. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Hey, thanks for having me, Keith. Glad to be here.
Yeah, you've got a pretty big company. You've got a bunch of number of sites where you sell things like external hard drives and cables and connectors and dongles and all sorts of things like that. So, what are some of the big changes that you've seen in the computing industry since you started this company? You guys have been around for about 35 years now.
Absolutely. We started, with a drive to provide, great upgrade options, for what you could do within a system. At the time, it was not super clear, and it was kind of expensive getting service, but it was really easy to upgrade, whether it's a Mac or a PC, add more memory, add a bigger drive, even improve the processor. And certainly back in the beginning, there were huge opportunities to take existing technology and make it better than what you could buy new. You're better off upgrading than buying a new system. Over the course of time, we've seen all those, a large part of those internal upgrade opportunities kind of go away, and now everything's external. That being said, systems have gotten so much faster, so much, in a lot of ways, cleaner. But there's I guess you could say, there's other pros and cons as we've gone down this journey.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we're in a disposable technology kind of era now, where back in the day when we first had our PCs, my dad and I would upgrade by basically opening the back of the case and adding more memory, or adding a storage drive or graphics card, changing that out. And unless you're in a kind of a niche community now, like maybe you're in the gaming community, you can still see a lot of people doing that. You still see a lot of people that are building their own PCs. But I think for the mainstream user, they just feel like if they have a feeling that their computer is slow, they just swap it out or trade it in and get a new one rather than to trying to upgrade. That feels like it's a bad thing, but what is your stance on it? Obviously, because you want people to buy your upgrades in memory and things like that, right?
Oh, sure. And over the years, we've transitioned from these upgrades being internal to a lot of these upgrades being external. And people really need to have a good idea of what their real needs are, and still be aware there's so much is now possible externally with the high speed connectivity that we had. 15, 20 years ago, the only way to have performance, it required an internal upgrade. To get to that bus. Today, it's really impressive when you just take a look at literally the physics involved to be able to provide 40 gigabit, soon 80, 120 gigabits of connectivity via plug and play cable that anybody can use, anybody can connect externally. And I guess that another big change that I guess you can look at and see where things really took a major shift was when solid state drives came out. You get into the late, call it 2008 to 2010 period, we're becoming less bound by the actual compute power and more bound by I/O. Mm-hmm. So as SSDs came into the opportunity, suddenly you could put an SSD in an older system and it would absolutely crush a computer that had a hard drive in it. And that was the case, still is technically the case today, but became the case for a good period of time. And now with everything, or almost everything, shipping with SSDs, whether it's our solid state stores, like whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone, the different, any tablet that's out there is going to have solid state. We've got devices that have amazing processing power, more processing power in the palm of your hand than a computer had a decade ago.
Right. And
then combined with that storage that's super fast and eliminates what had really become the bottleneck a decade ago.
Do you, the company that gets a lot of the quote unquote blame for a lot of this disposable idea is Apple, and because they don't necessarily allow you to upgrade their systems as much as you used to be able to, or you can't swap out a battery, for example, on this or on other devices. But you're tied into, with a lot of your companies, you're tied into this Apple ecosystem. So have you seen other companies that do this as well in the computing space, or is it mainly an Apple issue? And then how's your relationship been with Apple under Tim Cook versus the way it was under Steve Jobs?
It's not just Apple, although Apple certainly has paved the way, and I would, you can you can listen to their arguments, and I'm not going to necessarily debate Apple good, bad, and different. But it is, I do think it's unfortunate soldering things in where if memory fails or you need more memory, it's fixed with what you get at the factory. It kind of limits, it reduces the customer's opportunity on the aftermarket side because it's a fixed system. I mean, whatever it is, there's no additional internal capability. Storage is a big one. It really stinks when you do want more internal storage and there's no means to upgrade it. But on the other side of that, Apple makes systems that last arguably longer than anybody else. I mean, Apple hardware, that's a decade plus old is pretty common to find out there because of the external capabilities you can still use to enhance these systems. While we lost a lot of the internal, upgradability externally, It's pretty incredible what you can connect. Again, just with a simple plug and play cable. The one thing I will complain about is the lack of general serviceability. It's unfortunately pretty hard and difficult to do basic service to a lot of these systems because everything is so integrated. I mean, if something goes out on the logic board, it's a whole logic board. It's a whole screen. And I would like to see Apple make repair easier just to keep these systems in service because they last so long.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick example of this, and so my phone, for example, the connector port here wasn't working very well, and it wasn't charging, and it was like wiggling when I was putting in the cable. So I was thinking, oh great, I got to go get a new phone. So I first went to my carrier, and they said, oh, you have to go to the Apple store because you're under Apple Care. So I drive 45 minutes to my Apple store, and go to the Genius Bar, set up an appointment, and the lady comes out and says, oh, okay, well, I think I know what it is. And then goes behind, she goes into another room and basically then does whatever secret thing that they're doing and fixes the port. So now I don't have to buy a new phone. I don't have to get a new phone because now the charging works again. And it was just, there was gunk and debris in there. And I said, well, how can I do that? And she didn't really offer of a do-it-yourself fix because well, if you try to jam something in there, it's going to ruin the pins and then you're going to ruin the phone. And it just felt like it was there should be an easier way to kind of make that little fix or that little change rather than my assumption going in was I was going to have to get a new phone.
And that's unfortunately, but it's not just Apple. I mean, pretty much, any place you go into this selling new equipment or any brand store, I mean, their primary push lately, I mean, for a while has been, let's say, a new device, or it's time to replace that device, as opposed to, hey, it's working just fine. There's no new OS I need or no new hardware I need to run the current OS. Let's keep it going. And it's interesting. I mean, as we have all these focuses out there on sustainability, it's really pretty wild to me. Just how much attention hasn't been on, or at least a lot of focus on technology in general, because technology is such a major consumption point for a lot of resources that are truly finite. Yeah,
can we pin when this change happened? Was it just because I mean, again, I don't want to pick on Apple here, but there's always this idea of that every year Apple would put out a new iPhone, and that started the cycle, and you started to think, well, I'd have to upgrade my computer every 3 or 4 or 5 years. Mainly it was because again, I was a computer gamer, so it always was well, I don't have the memory or the storage requirement. But once storage and memory became so inexpensive, that became no longer an issue. And the games never really pushed the envelope after a certain point either. I have probably a computer downstairs in the basement that's 10 plus years old and can still play a lot of these modern games. It's not like it used to be, I think, in terms of needing to upgrade a computer or a phone. Is that what we are in now, where we've got to this disposable culture, and it feels like that makes the sustainability thing even worse, doesn't it? Because now you've got piles and piles of stuff, and the only way you could recycle them is sending them back to the manufacturer.
Well, the good news is, in addition, I mean, we engineer and manufacture all sorts of amazing upgrades that keep older technology up to date, or certainly able to keep up with a lot of the things that a new system would provide, but you just plug it into an existing. On the flip side of that, when it is time to replace the system, we actually, and there's other companies like us that take this hardware back and will give it a new home, find a new home for it. Because there's no reason, and I hate that. I mean, recycling is wonderful when it's necessary, when something's truly reached end of life, but to take something that's working and disassemble it that's a total waste of resources when that could be out serving somebody.
Do you think that more people are like me, where we get into this I'm just going to upgrade whenever I can, or do you think more people are in that mindset of let's try to make it last as long as it can?
I think you have a lot more people today. It depends upon, I guess, what you're doing with the technology. More people today, I mean, honestly, and this was kind of Joe's vision way back when, and I'm not saying that I agree with this wholeheartedly. I mean, it's, I agree with the vision of, hey, if you need a better toaster, it's, you replace the one you have with something bigger, but I also believe you should be able to service that toaster. There's certainly not a focus on service today. I mean, a lot of people are used to things reaching what they think is just a normal end of life point, and it's time to get something new, as opposed to, I've got my screen cracked, or I've got a problem with my port. You could even look at shoes. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, I mean, it's something, your sole, got damaged. There were shoe shops all over the place. You'd bring it in to get a new sole. Today it's very difficult to, I mean, we have a few in Austin, but it's hard to, your favorite pair of shoes repaired versus, just going out, time to get a new one. But there are definitely avenues where this gear finds ongoing life, and easy solutions for the most part, especially what's been enabled through Thunderbolt. And to some degree USB4, but especially Thunderbolt, to take a system that maybe didn't come with what the latest and greatest now has, but with a simple cable, suddenly you've got what used to be only possible with an internal slot.
Right. And I want to ask about that internal-external discussion that we were having earlier. So, you make a really good point that as speeds on these connectors got faster and faster, then you start seeing more external drives and external connectors and things like that. But that also then gave rise to the fact that we've got a number of different ports on the machines, and we've got a whole lot of cables. And, it felt like that the idea was to reduce the number of cables and ports on a system. We've seen computers do that as well. But on my desk at my home office, I've got the power port, I've got a headphone jack, I've got a dongle that connects to an external display because I want to have multiple monitors up on my desk. I've got another, one that charges from this computer to this one because I don't feel like using the wall wart. And, it's just, in my desk, it's just like this snake-like, mess of cables. And then, as the cable changes, then you're just like, well, I got to throw this into a box, and I've got a box in my house of all of these different cables and connectors, and it just drives me crazy. It feels like we're not getting any better around this idea of connectors. Do you have that on your desk, or how do you solve for that problem?
USB-C is a connector. I mean, it's not an interface. It is the connector that, whether you're using USB 3 or USB 4 or Thunderbolt, 3, 4, and the upcoming 5, USB-C is at least becoming a universal. I mean, for example, the Thunderbolt 4 cables that we manufacture, that we build today, they're completely universal. Whether you're going to use them to power a C device, just charge it from a charging port, or if you're going to power your computer from a charger, or if you're going to drive a display, if you're going to connect high-speed storage. The same cable, the same Thunderbolt cable that's USB-C works with everything. In fact, it's even going to work with Thunderbolt 5 that's around the corner, which is really cool to have forwards compatibility. So I do think Type-C is kind of a good solution. And you got to give a little bit of credit to Europe for telling the world, including that company in California, that we want to have a single cable that works for everything, so that people are not having to have this big giant collection of cables. So it doesn't help the devices, obviously, we've already got, but as we go forward, there's going to be, in my opinion, just the way things are going, it's not even my opinion, you can already see it happening. There's going to be more universality with the cable, but that also, it becomes very important that you have the right cable. The number one tech issue that we run into is a customer that has a cable that looks like it looks like a $1,000 cable. I mean, it might be $100 cable, it might be a $50 cable, but it looks like a super high quality cable. It's got C in both ends. The assumption, and it may have come from Apple because it came with the computer, with the charger that charges the computer from the wall adapter. But it's just a USB. That's just a charging cable, and they try to use it for data.
Oh, okay, yeah. And is that a bigger problem, that because people are looking for less expensive cables and not realizing that, power versus data?
When you're buying a cable, I think people get sucked into cables that are really low cost, thinking that they're just fine. I mean, a cable's a cable. And it's never been 100% that way, but there used to be a lot less issue with a USB-A cable. It was low power. I mean, it was only 5 to 10 watts that would go through a USB-A cable, and you were only up to 5G, or if not USB 2 speed. USB 2, 480 megabits versus 5G and USB 3. Now you have a interface Type C that might just be charging on one device, but on another device you can put 4,000 megabytes a second through it. You can drive a display through it. You can drive 240 watts of power through it. And that's where you really want to be selective on your cable. When you buy a Thunderbolt certified cable, it's universal for anything you can connect from C to C.
Right.
When you buy a USB cable, it might only be a 30 watt cable or a 60 watt cable. Or worse, and this is where you got to, this is not like the old days where if it works, it works. It's just a low cost, low power, low data cable. A C cable can pass 240 watts of power. That's a lot of power. And there are E-marks on these cables and certifications so that they're, just like UL and other things, they are actually safe for that amount of power. Buying a cheap USB cable is either going to leave you with a cable that's legitimate, but limited in terms of what it can do. And when you think it's going to even give you full power to your computer, you're going to find out something's not charging as fast as it should, or even your computer doesn't have the power you expect. Or worse, you end up with a cable that it could even potentially be unsafe if it's not certified. I'm
gonna ask this question in the realm of just a regular typical end user, not someone who's in the like a server connection or things like that. But it feels like most data transfer now for computer users is not even through cables, unless you have an external hard drive. Then you're connecting that way, and you're backing up your system there. And again, I'm guilty of not backing up my systems as much as I should. So most of my data backup goes to the cloud. And I think, is there a danger of this assumption that most data transfer, whether I'm just, going through the cloud to upload data, back it up, send stuff via email, that most of my cables connections are just for power rather than data? Is there a danger of that destroying my life at some point? I suppose I should, and I already know the answer, I think, to that is that I should have more external hard drive data backup than I do.
I guess I say two things. The nice thing about buying a good universal USB-C cable, again, Thunderbolt, definitely the way I'd recommend it. Anything USB-C is whenever you do need it for something, if it's something new, something old, it's always going to work and it's always going to be for the full power. At this point, any Thunderbolt certified cable out there pretty much is going to be 240 watt, which has got you backwards all the way to your lowest power device and whatever is yet to come out in the future. But the cloud is great, but if anybody has ever tried to recover from the cloud when they've had a catastrophic local data loss, it can be a real nightmare. It's expensive. There's all sorts of, the cloud is a great tertiary thing. The cloud is great for data that you want to be able to access when you're on the go and don't necessarily have that storage with you, or it's across multiple devices, when you're at the office, you're on a trip, whatever it might be. But I really recommend in general that people own their data and have that locally, because nobody cares more than you about your financial records, your music, and especially your family photos and other data, videos such that is personal to you. And if it's lost, is
right,
it's just not recoverable. And the cost of the cloud, all these things. So many things. Even Amazon is going to start charging for Alexa now. These things that used to be almost free that have just kind of incrementally crept up. The cost of cloud storage today is not a great deal compared to owning your own data, having your backup locally. Now, put the things in the cloud that you want to have access to, or hey, fine, use the cloud as a backup. But you should, ideally, if not one, should have two local backups. One that you can rotate to another space. Because if you ever need that data, nothing beats having data on site. And when you own it and control it.
And I'm hoping that the business people that are doing this for their business are doing this a lot more than I am. But I feel like I'm probably a typical user, and I probably don't do it as much as I should. And the same thing with regular users too, or out there, regular consumers. They're just like, oh, it's backed up to the cloud. I'm fine. But I think that they might not realize how tricky it could be to get it once it's like if you've lost it on your local drive. And I don't know, I'm just really bad at that kind of stuff. All right, so you can't get away with being a guest on the show without talking about generative AI and its influence in the world. What kind of influence is it having on, what you guys do in this space, on the computing space in general? What are you seeing out there?
We're certainly focused on solutions that are going to support, more localized opportunities or enhancements to, what's being done in the cloud. I mean, the more we can, again, make it easier for users and enhance what users can do with the hardware they have versus depending on what really is getting pretty expensive to do for major modeling up in the cloud, we feel the better. For our own organization, we've been working with it internally, and it's not here to replace people. It's here really to augment and enhance, whether it's customer service, the sales, even some of the design and communication. It lets us get more done more quickly, and certainly as we bring it out and roll it out. Right now, we have a lot of things piloted internally, but the main intent is to enhance how we interface with our customer and have the ability to more quickly deliver the right answers. And that's again, I think it's absolutely, anybody has to see this as an augmentation, has to use it as an augmentation. Everything has changed everything. I mean, it's from when the world is, there's always going to be a next disruptor. This is a big one, but embracing it's an opportunity to really, I think, advance what we can personally do.
It feels like on your end that accuracy and reducing hallucinations is probably more important than maybe the creative aspects of generative AI and creating new things or helping people code and things like that. That's probably less of a focus than on just making sure that an answer is correct and accurate and not goofy, right?
Yeah, that's definitely been, it's, in the beginning, I mean, some of the bigger issues were that it would, go back in time and pull something that was, completely irrelevant to a current question. And those things are all tweakable. Even in coding, which actually we do use some AI in coding today.
Okay.
It's not there to replace, it's there to help take some of the drudge work out of the equation, but it's still being proved, still being checked, still being worked on, by a human. And it's a balance. You don't replace people with AI. I mean, I know some want to replace people with AI. Ideally, you're increasing the productivity of everybody, and that creates new opportunities for everybody in the organization and whoever you're serving, because we become a better organization as we already have the information. We have great data. We have great ideas. This just lets us get that information communicated quicker or get the project done faster. So again, those benefits are shared.
So where do you see then computing going in the next kind of 5 years? Do you see, is it going to be this world where we're going to have even more devices, or are we going to basically be, one laptop, one phone, and that's always been the prediction, is that most people will just have those two devices, unless they're doing something that requires a different form factor, and then you'll see some tablets and things like that, and other types of creative, outlets for those things. For example, like a few years ago, there was this idea that you would have only one device, and it would be able to. It was this multi-purpose device where it could be a laptop if you needed it, and then you flip it around, and then you have a tablet, and then there's a keyboard that comes out, or you do something wirelessly with your fingers. And I saw a lot of people trying this whole. I just want one device rather than 6 or 7, and it doesn't seem like we're ever going to get there. Whenever I go traveling with my notebook, I have the notebook itself, but then I have a bag full of cables and connectors and other things and dongles, and just because I might need to then copy back, I've got a little portable storage drive, I've got a portable charger type of things. It feels like that's more of the future than this one device, one system type thing. What are your thoughts on where we might be headed?
I think we're pretty well on the same page with that.
Yeah.
And by the way, there are docks and such for that, so one cable can control all your devices and charge, but
those docks are big, and that's like a desktop scenario. I can't put that dock in my backpack, right?
Actually, we do have a dock that goes in your backpack. There's no external power supply for it. It's just a single plug to the wall, and one plug to your computer will power your computer and gives you a display, gives you Ethernet, gives you, a bunch of USBs, gives you audio, all that fun stuff. So yeah, there are docks you can take with you that will eliminate some of those extra cables. But on the question that you put forth, one phone and one laptop. That's a pretty common. I think that's pretty typical today, and is going to be typical as we go forward. The only exception to that, if you're in business, the access to a PC. There's pretty. I mean, like Thunderbolt Share that just came out is going to be a pretty interesting way. At some point, I hope to be able to share a PC with a Mac. You can use two PCs that way. If you're a gamer at home, you've got your work computer, and now you can. And this is where the technology is going, at least. While you may not have one device, you'll be able to connect those devices and share resources, share devices between them. So
right.
You get your great, perfect setup, and now you want to. You're done with your 80-hour work week, and you're ready to kick back and fire up some game. You can sit there and just take control of another PC, or use another PC resource that's set up for gaming, and then it's right in front of you with the same keyboard, with the same display. Without having to move things around or go to a completely separate rig.
All right, Larry O'Connor, again, thanks again for joining us on the show today. Some great stuff here. Thanks.
Absolutely a pleasure.
All right, that's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.